Everybody, it's your main man, Anthony Brogdon, and brothers, sisters around the world. I got a lady on the channel today. She gonna blow your mind. Watch out. Ooh, she one of them conscious sisters that's on point with what she is doing in her town, city, state, and nationally. Y'all gonna love this story, my friends, because I'm Anthony Brogdon and I ain't playing with you. I'm not gonna play with you. I'm gonna find people like this lady and let them come on and tell this story succinctly, expeditiously, and some other leads that you can come up with. Watch. I am excited about this one. Let me tell you something, my friends. I had a hard time sleeping last night, knowing that I had an opportunity to interview this lady on Strong Inspirations. So what I want you to do is hit the subscribe button. It's free. We don't ask no information. All that it really does is let me know you like me. All right? Hit the like button on this video because you're going to love it a lot. There's no question about it. Very warm sister, too. Watch. It'll come through. And then hit the notifications bell for when the videos come up. You get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal. The lights flicker on your house. Your cell phone rings. Something to let you know there's new content. And I am going to continually do this from now on. Let me say something there. I'm a better person as a result of Strong Inspirations. I have learned so much by the guests that have come on the show. Let me tell you this. I got one video. The guy is out of Africa. No, he's out of New York, but he goes to Africa a lot. And he goes in the pyramids and whatnot. And he says one of the things that he noticed on all those journeys, and someone pointed out to, is you can notice the difference between Africans of different tribes and countries and so on and so forth. And I said, how's that? He said, by how fast people move. Americans, we move fast. We jumping around and that kind of thing. And he said, that's one of the telltale signs. I said, man, I never thought of that. He said, they do. Did you see the one that I did with the lady in Laurel, Mississippi, who puts together those marches and had a march, and the white folks was on top of the roofs with guns and rifles? God said, we're going to go through with this. Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the lady who talks about when Black people got to America before 1619 and how that happened? Watch that video. How about this one? Did you see the one I did with the lady who, and this is kind of on this sister, the guest today, viewpoint on how the Black farmers and Black people losing their land and how that has happened over the years. And she's an advocate. She's an attorney to help stop that trend. Watch that video. I'm not playing with you. And I don't want to. You don't want me to. And so we're not. We're going to find these people, let them come on. A couple more things. As you may know, I'm my own personal tip. I'm a filmmaker, everybody. Boom. There it is. This is the DVD. Nobody got DVD players. I understand that. So it is streaming on Amazon. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America, 1800 to 1960. I give you a tip. And maybe you know or don't know, there were enslaved Black folks who owned businesses. And in many instances, they used the profits to buy their freedom. So you want to learn more about that? Watch my movie and boom shakalaka, my friends, read my book. This book is in some respects the #1 Black business history book on the market. You got to get you a copy of this. And I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm not no big reader. You know, I mean, I read some here and there, but if it's a book that gets me right to the point, which is what my book does, because I add no commentary, I let the fact stand on its own merit. And it's over 200 of them facts. And really more than that, because I list all the HBCUs. I list a ton of Black-owned banks, ton of Black-owned newspapers. And I tell you a little bit about each one, just to let you know, whet your appetite, and also about them enslaved Black folks who own businesses. And the book is reasonably priced because I really want you to have this. And every 10th book I sell, I donate one to a school across the country. You buy 10 books, I donate it to a school in your honor. I send all 10 books to a school. Why don't you do that? Don't let them kids not learn this information. They didn't teach me some of this in school. It would have inspired me too much. I'd have been walking out of there saying, boom, I got this. They ain't want that to happen. So get you a copy of my book, couple more housekeeping. Let me tell you, the book is so good. And I'm so on my point, let's say, my friends, I'm doing a stage play adapted from my book here in Detroit. It's called They Did It. And it's coming up. It's March 31st weekend here in Detroit. And if you're in the city, come on through. Get you a ticket. It's, you hang out with us. And I'm going to take it on the road. Watch me. I don't play. Y'all got to learn this. This is my calling, my mission in life. So that's that. All that I do, you can learn about on my website, businessintheblack.net. Just go to businessintheblack.net. You buy the book and all that. It's securely processed, PayPal and through them, them payment systems. Don't worry about that. I'm not cheating nobody because I want to go to heaven. I really do. I do. I believe in that. If I do good things will happen to me. And now you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. I wish my middle name was strong. I try to act like a strong guy in my best behavior, most all times. And in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to my guest today. Come on, you strong soul sister. Come on, let's get it on. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm blown away by what you had to say. And I just really want to thank you for the work that you do in Detroit. And it just really reminds me of the growing up in New York City and having such role models as yourself around, Liberation Store, the Meeting Place, and having Dr. Leonard Jeffries at City College while there and his department, and one of the most eminent of lawyers I've met, my mentor, Haywood Burns.
Okay.
W. Haywood Burns, and
okay.
He had provided legal representation to the Attica brothers from his law firm where he was.
I mean, no disrespect in this, but tell us your name, please.
Oh, sorry. My name is Savanala Horn Savi. And I live in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and work out of the Land Loss Prevention Project in Durham, the old city of Durham.
All right. I got a couple questions on you personally, if you don't mind. Where were you born and raised?
Oh, I was born in the Hilltop Village of Jamaica, Refuge Hill, and had some Maroonage ancestry as well as linked to that place.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting because I know a little bit about that. And so what is it like there where you were born and raised, as you remember?
As I recall, it was a very small, close-knit communities of subsistence farmer and fisher folk. Fisher folk usually were fishers of the Roaring River, which comes through a swath of plantations back in the day in Jamaica. And so we had a community day similar in some of the celebratory pieces of Juneteenth, and steep in the Southern African American agrarian tradition as well, where, you know, there is a community gathering around food. And so on August 1, which is Emancipation Day, the end of celebration for the end of the British slave trade in the Caribbean, families would slaughter hogs, cows, goats, divide it up so everybody could eat, but then prepare a collective meal to celebrate and gather around the fire, telling stories of slavery days and liberation. So it is that rural agrarian tradition that I came out of, and then wound up in Jamaica, New York, where I've been, where I grew up, really. And got very steep in African American culture. So that really, in terms of cultural relationships, that is where I ground myself.
Let me ask you this, because that's a very interesting story, and I had heard of it. Do you know, going back some ancestors, what the story is, how they got there? Have you done any of that research, genealogy, in terms of your family lineage?
I have heard through the oral tradition of Ghana lineage, Nigeria lineage, and when we ran a DNA on my dad, he was very, very diverse genetically, from Benin to the Cameroon down into Southern Africa in his gene pool. And so I would think a lot of the Maroonage tradition, given the fact that these were very combative freedom fighters as well, would have come out of say Ghana and Nigeria and the Cameroon.
Go ahead. Let me stay on that. So what happened? They brought the black people to the island, and then some of them escaped and ran up into the hills. Was it a hill that you lived on?
Well, it was
not away. How was it make?
So when we talk about maroon towns, there are geographic, historically designated places of maroon resistance. And yes, some escaped slavery, but they also fought for their freedom. So where I was born was not that place, but it was a place where people replanted themselves right after slavery and developed their own system of communal ownership, and then devolving into from owning a square of land to maybe 1 or 2 squares, and really resettle themselves in that tradition. But the narrative of the Maroons were very, very steep in the folklore there in that hilltop. That was how people identified, was through those stories as to who they were.
What did you lived in a house, if I may ask, of some sort, I suspect? What was the house like? What was the neighborhood like? Did you see white people? That's 3 questions.
No, there were no white people. And it really is where, when I was born, where my mother lived and my grandmother, was essentially a 1-room house. But there were quite a few of those in that little village, and a mix of cement structured homes.
Okay.
But that was, 67 years ago.
Sure, sure.
And so it's a very different place. In fact, I feel that my childhood has been erased because it's totally very developed, very dense with homes. And in fact, I sometimes imagine that in the spiritual walk with the land that I felt as a child, that those spirits have been so crowded out by development that they exist within your mind and the stories that you have kept in your consciousness, but it is now so crowded. I always say to myself that it would just blow the ancestors away because there's no space for them
All
in
right.
such
Which
overcrowded places.
which that leads to this question. If I went to Jamaica, and I've been to Jamaica a few times, is it some part of where you grew up, or just the Maroon community, a tourist attraction where people can go and see some remnants of something?
I wouldn't say they can see any remnants of anything, really. It's been so developed. There is a raftable river of in some sections of the Roaring River, with sheer escarpment, which as a child, every time I see bobsledding and those very dangerous winter sports,
Yeah.
it reminded me of days when children would get on cardboard and just wind themselves down with no trees to break their speed, but you had to be agile enough to kind of pivot back and forth down these escarpment, and then what they would call doing a headers
Mhm.
down into the riverbed. So, I mean, those were the dangerous things that
Yeah. Okay.
children would do. But no, it is as everywhere else due to the push for economic development, particularly in
Sure.
the economic sector of tourism.
Sure.
And in fact, my family has experienced land loss due to government taking and sell off of land that
Okay.
had been held in the family for tourism sector. So
Oh,
the
wow.
African American narrative of land loss really is a universal condition of where Black folk have lived everywhere. Southern Africa, the Caribbean, has been about dispossession and development to benefit larger interests outside of our communities.
Sure. Now I know that's part of what you do today, but before we get to that, going to New York had to blow your mind. Going from a small island to America's largest metropolis city, and you in the Queens and Jamaica.
Yes,
how did that do, and how did you adjust?
it did blow my mind because, in many ways, because it's 68. In fact, March 31st, 1968, Kennedy Airport, arriving with family and traveling to our humble working class home, working class, lower middle class home in Jamaica, New York, and then watching really television for the first time.
Wow.
And
really?
About the protests, African American protests, the assassination of Kennedy and of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
so, yeah, but what kept me together and gave me a sense of place was my elementary school. We had the first, in my mind, African American principal. Miss Pulliam, I don't recall her first name, but the teacher that touched my spirit was from the South, Mr. Smith, and he had taken a special liking to me and really shepherded me in the performance arts at the school and telling stories about life, rural life in Jamaica, because there were quite a few African Americans from the rural South at that school. And so it was building a community around collective storytelling and discovering for ourselves the commonality that we had as a people. So in many regards, I felt grounded and still back somewhat in the Caribbean,
Oh, okay.
because
Okay.
the school was like a village.
Yeah. Okay. Other than when
You know,
that
our
winter came
teachers,
along.
yeah, our teachers cared about us. We
Okay.
put on community plays and dances for our community. It was a
Okay.
very tight-knit community. And
Eh,
it's a very special place in my consciousness.
Well, and so, and I'm sure that was part of the answer you'll give now. What led you to love Black history and do the work that you do today?
Well, I think it's for very obvious reasons.
Yeah, sure.
Being steep in the African American tradition in Jamaica, New York, and the coming together of African American people from all over the South, and different economic strata,
Okay.
but there was this collectiveness about beyond just striving to become middle class and educated, but also about holding on to African American and Black roots, and to see ourselves contributing to that rich texture and history of being New York.
Did you think as growing up that you could make a career out of being what you are today, or was this always an aim of yours? Because you're an attorney, correct? Is that right?
Yes, I'm a proud graduate of Rutgers University,
All right.
School of Law in Newark. And I feel like I've upheld the activism banner of Rutgers being in Newark, and the rich heritage and teachings of some of its most brilliant professors at that school, who cared about civil rights, women's rights, and protection of speech. And so from out of that, I think I was influenced, and workers' rights, because we had a major workers' rights firm down the road.
Okay.
And I just feel out of that very rich cultural heritage of being in Newark with a Black mayor, Kenneth Gibson, really did shape my life. Yes.
And so you then again, give us the name of the organization and what do you do at the organization? What is it?
Okay, so really, the North Carolina Association of Black Lawyers Land Loss Prevention Project. It was founded in 1983, 40 years ago, as a result of Black lawyers coming together and looking at what was determined to be an erosion of Black land ownership and rights in Eastern North Carolina. Now, Eastern North Carolina is part of the historic Black Belt region of the South, and it is the most northern tip of the Black Belt. And historically, that has been a swath of economically depressed communities extending to Louisiana. It also dips into Texas, which had as a part of its history slavery, discrimination, and persistent economic erosion.
Okay.
So it is out of that legacy, if you will, that Black lawyers who grew up in Eastern North Carolina pulled together a task force to study how they could use their skill set as lawyers to shape legal remedies and therefore stem the loss of land in eastern North Carolina amongst Black farmers.
Okay, let me ask you this: what cities are we talking about that I might know of in your particular area?
Well, the organization was founded in Durham, North Carolina.
Okay, Durham.
At
Okay.
a historic African American college and university, and that is North Carolina Central University, which
Okay.
has a law school.
Okay. And so and some
in the
go ahead.
South.
Okay.
One of the few African American law schools in the South.
Now, when we talk about and you mentioned this, the black belt, I really have never heard of that. I know, North Carolina might have some what we call the Gullah Geechee corridor. Is that an official name, the black belt that you used for the region?
It's a historic and cultural geographic designation.
Oh, okay.
Because of the nature, I believe, of the soil and the people who tilled the soil, who were enslaved on those plantations. And so it is known as the Black Belt. So it's a socio-cultural, political designation. And in fact, one of the most illustrious African-American, one of my favorite, W.E.B. Du Bois, wrote in The Souls of Black Folk, published 120 years ago.
Okay.
From 1903 to 2023, 120 years ago.
Sure.
He has a chapter in there of the Black Belt. So I would urge everyone listening to your show and your field of influence to read again, if you have not, The Souls of Black Folk, because it waxes eloquently with poetry, his command of English language, it's just beautiful, but it grounds us in the reality of what the South was like of the Black Belt 120 years ago. And really, when you look at it, and you look at, say, 2023 and some of the conditions that the Southwest Georgia movement of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, their own findings around that, it was just not that much had changed in Dougherty County, right?
Okay.
That led to the civil rights movement, and around the activities of Reverend Charles Sherrard, Shirley Sherrard. And yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So now let's go back to, if we let's say the beginning. Black people had land how in that area?
Well, as Du Bois described, there were substantial land ownership. He described Black men who farmed up to 500, 600 acres of land. There were mostly the farmers were tenant farmers who were still on these plantations, right? And it's interesting that in the 1960s and 70s, around the drive for voting education, and just to vote, that Black people were still tenant farmers on some of these plantations, as Reverend Sherrard and Shirley Sherrard described, how they would be tossed off of the land and made homeless, and how the Southwest Georgia movement coalesced around not just voting, but they began to look at alternative ways that they could own land as a collective to begin to house our people. And out of that arose the new communities land trust, the first African American and the first community land trust in the country came out of the soil of the Black Belt in
Okay.
Georgia, out of a
Okay.
movement that saw Black people being thrown off land because they chose to exercise their right to vote by registering to vote.
Okay, let me make sure I got this. Okay, do the Black people, you said they're tenant farmers, do they have ownership of the land?
Not as tenant farmers,
Right.
but you also had Black farmers who owned land.
Who owned the
as
land?
well. Outright owned their land.
They either bought it or was willed to them by the, let's say, the white guy.
They bought land.
Okay.
They through the collective courage of families coming together, they were able to buy land. Now, some of the descriptions of Black land ownership in W.E.B. Du Bois' book, the chapter of the Black Belt, some of those were self-emancipated African Americans who were able to save and work and were able to buy land.
Okay.
He never mentioned any land that was willed to Black people by whites.
Okay.
In this chapter.
So they own this land, and is there some land that is the most noted, a name for it, that Black people own, that everybody says, oh man, I've heard of that land? I know you say the Black Belt, but is there like one guy whose family owned a bunch of acres and that we should all know of that name?
Well, I'm sure if you maybe invest time and read of the Black Belt in the souls of Black folk, but yes, right now we can uplift the first community land trust, New Communities. At that time, Black farmers owned 5,000 acres of land in Southwest Georgia. And due to economic oppression and loan system and floods, but really due to political economic oppression, they lost that land.
Whoa.
They lost that land. So by the 1980s, they had lost that land. And it took the opportunity under the Pigford lawsuit, that massive lawsuit by African-American farmers, at a very interesting moment for Shirley Sherrard, after she had been throughout Southwest Georgia and Northeast Florida, because that comes together in terms of where Black people are residing and farmers own land. Southwest Georgia, Northeast Florida. She described it as a light bulb went off, that they too could file a claim coming out of under the structure of the class action settlement. And it took like 10 to 14 years before they were able to get money from the Pigford lawsuit and then purchase land once again. Not 5,000 acres back, but they were able, I believe, to purchase a 1,400 to 1,600 acre plantation, and that is now being governed under the New Communities Land Trust and by the Southwest Georgia Project. And it's really an amazing place to visit. It's in Black land ownership, and it has been renamed Resora as a place of rest, restitution, and recovery.
So that's a place I should go to and see, and then people should go.
You should absolutely go there. Because the white landowner who had it and eventually died, he was the one who came up with the mechanism for paying for your gas at the pump. So think about all the royalties that estate got since we have had paid at the pump. He was able to amass a fortune to renovate this plantation home and even pivot it, turn it, and built some beautiful, I would say, 5-star hunting lodges on that land, established close to about an 800-acre pecan grove. You have a beautiful, beautiful pond where you can see eagles and osprey and a once alligator named Fred, but he's joined his ancestors.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So now the Black people had the land, and they took it away. Is there a story like what happened in California where somehow the state government stepped in? You know the story with the beach in California?
Yes, no. So there was no
a story like that
reparation.
there?
There's no reparations in this regard. The settlement that they got from Pigford, class action, was used to secure this new land, right? And of course, one can, the joining of abusive state power, right? i.e. state of Georgia, federal power to strip down the original land ownership should have led to some kind of reparations, but that has not happened. It was collectively from the settlement that they were able to secure this new land. And I might say, historically, that area of Southwest Georgia was also the site for the Nation of Islam farm. That was several thousand acres at one point. And I think right now it's maybe 500 to 250 acres.
Okay. Well, with that happening, and the Black people losing the land, what became of those Black people in many instances? Is there a family that you follow that lost their land and where they went? Any of that kind of story, and maybe they were able to overcome that and be, I don't know what happened. Is there any of those stories?
In Southwest Georgia, there is a video about it. I think it's called the Arc of Justice.
Okay.
And what I will do is I will get the correct title and send that to you so that
please.
in the future you can make that available. But it then becomes a story of the civil rights struggle in Southwest Georgia. And there's some beautiful footage in there of when Black folk owned that 5,000-acre farm. And they're tilling and growing, and there are plans to set up villages and health centers and schools. And at the same time, you get a very foreboding sense of, well, they're doing this, but what lies ahead? That would lead to the loss of that land. But now you also now have Resora. So that is Black folk redemption, but that has nothing to do with reparations.
Do you maybe you've alluded to this already, but maybe it's a question. Do you know of, and I'm sure you do, of some land that goes down so many generations that they weren't not able to steal, but they attempted to steal, and things worked in the people's favor that they didn't let them steal it?
Well, steal is the right word? Yes. I mean, that's a perfectly fine word, stolen legacy.
Right.
And let's just kind of back it up for a minute and just look at the historic land loss.
Okay.
So as you and most of your radio audience are very familiar with this, that in 50 years after the end of the Civil War, African Americans by 1910 basically owned more than 15 million acres of farmland, and they had up to about 925,000 farmers, be it full-time farming, tenant farming, part-time farmers. All of that gets to that 900, almost a million farmers of the land. And that by the end of the Great Depression of the 1930s, Black land ownership and farmers were drastically reduced by about 50%, right? And that, but the interesting piece, though, is that when you look across a timeline, say from 1910 down into the 1960s, what you would see is that during the time of the Civil Rights Movement, the classic period of 1954 after Brown versus Board of Education to 1969, you find that Black farmers fell from 126,000 to about 52,000. So that's like almost about 70%.
Right.
But what's more alarming was the further reduction of land ownership. In fact, the Emergency Land Fund and its roots, when you look at the work of Joe Brooks, you would then see that Black land ownership fell by the 1954 to down to where it would come to that 6 million.
Oh,
and so that's kind of where we are. So that even historically during that classic civil rights period in North Carolina, you had Black land ownership at over 1 million, close to 1.1 million, and then reduced to about 558,000 by 69. So that's almost like a 50% loss. And then by 2007, if you will. So by 1978, you had about 400,000. And that by 2007, you had 133,000.
Wow.
Acres. So that's kind of, will give, so, your listeners a sense of how drastic the decline has been, and just how the forces that led to that,
let me ask you, excuse me,
economic pressure and racial oppression during that time.
And that leads to my question here. Do you have a story of where a white person stole the land because they went on the land and either lynched the landowner or just did some violence to them, made them leave, then went to the courthouse and took the document and signed the name, did not transfer any money or anything, and just took the land? Is there a famous story like that?
I am sure that there are stories like that, but not to my personal knowledge.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking perhaps you can consult with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives as they begin to, amass their oral history project to capture.
I love to do it. Yeah.
So that is still a project in the making that is critical for the next generation of agrarians. Is really to know the true history of land ownership.
I love it.
The last 50 years and what has transpired down through time. and why this next generation of farmers would want to use legal instruments that to protect their land ownership rights, and where, when you look at it, just still, the vulnerability of Black land ownership is in a structure, a legal structure, but a very weak one, and that is heirship land, right? Where a family owns collectively all the lands of their great grandparents.
Okay.
And so because it's a very weak land ownership estate, it could easily be gotten, they could easily lose the land.
I see.
By,
I see. Let me ask you this. What do you do on a normal day? Do you, I mean, in your organization, do you all file lawsuits and that kind of thing?
My organization is a multifaceted law firm. It's a very small organization. We have a staff of 7. It's very small. And we have about 4.5 litigators, lawyers active. And we run the gamut from debt restructuring, providing legal representation to heirs property owners, getting people into USDA programs around the credit programs, as well as working with our land grant institution, North Carolina A&T, on technical assistance for farmers and NGOs, community-based organization, non-governmental organizations. So in terms of the day-to-day with active litigation, I would say that is far and few, but what we do is to engage in ways to protect land ownership through legal structure and prevent foreclosure. So we have a very foreclosure defense practice to keep people out of losing farmland and homes.
Do you all have to market your service to the farmers, or most of them know of you, or both?
No, well, because it's a practice of law, and the lawyers are admitted to practice in the state of North Carolina, so that's where we can only practice law. But then we also represent people who are financially distressed, historically underserved, and limited resource. So our service, we go by the federal guidelines of poverty, the income guidelines, and provide our services free of charge.
Oh my God, beautiful, beautiful. What's a good day for you?
A good day for me is working with our deputy director and the litigation staff on, what our cases are like and the kind of resources needed. And then working with a community-based organization, doing outreach, planning outreach, speaking to farmers, figuring out what they need. And it could be that they may need stuff around entity formation, business structure to scale or stabilize their farm. So we can provide that service. And then it could be a day in which we work with our DC-based partners on the Farm Bill or policy, the Rural Coalition, National Family Farm Coalition, our partners in Georgia, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives Land Assistance Fund. So it's a day of scoping legal work, but particularly zoning in on federal farm policy and making sure that the benefits of policy comes down the line to
I
really
got
to
you.
the farm gate to help the farmers.
Can you all and do you have and maybe you might have said this, like an arm that you lobby to on the state,
No, we
federal
are
level for
no, we are
policy, that
not.
kind of thing?
No, we're not at that place. We're a nonprofit, so you have to maintain guidelines as to how much lobbying you could do, but we do
Okay.
work with coalitions who can be more actively lobbying. So we can engage in processes that could assist in getting legislations done as a collective.
Okay. With that said, is there somebody that, if you don't mind, that you can shout out who is a legislator on the state or the federal level or congressman or something that has put in some policy to help Black farmers that has been effective?
I think in the most recently, a special shout out to Senator Booker, Senator Warnock, Senator Stabenow, Warren on the Senate side, and of course the Congressional Black Caucus has always stood for Black farmers and assisting them with crafting bills that could benefit Black farmers and being there for Black farmers. So major shout out for the Congressional Black Caucus.
If you had your way and you could magic wand something that could really help Black people, the Black farmers, what would that be?
Well, right now, due to the Inflation Reduction Act, we are getting some debt and loan forgiveness, but because of how, this negotiation, whenever you do a bill, especially a spending bill, and given the lay of the land in terms of, political infrastructure, some of those benefits fell by the wayside. So right now, Senator Warnock and Booker's under the Black Justice Farmers Act are trying to push through legislation that would provide tax relief for farmers whose debt were reduced or got delinquency paid off by the federal government, and therefore it triggers a taxable event.
Okay, I see.
So
I see what you mean.
We're trying to get to a place where when the farmer gets their 1099, and some of them have already gotten it, anybody who got relief, that they be in a position to pay the taxes. And so there are a number of groups who are working to provide that type of assistance for farmers by actively fundraising to do so.
What could my viewers, myself, do to help you in your efforts? Is there something that the general public can do?
I think the general public needs to stay abreast of what's going on in federal farm policy, especially this year and next year would be the time for a new farm bill. I think you stay engaged with your organization, with your state senator, your representatives. I think engagement with organizations that will send out bulletins like the Rural Coalition, like the Family Farm Coalition, like the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. All those organizations do action alert, and that if you monitor their websites, that would be a good place in which to plug in support when needed.
Okay. Just a few more questions. In terms of your law firm, being a nonprofit, do you have fundraising efforts that people can contribute to?
Well, I really, because we are a law firm, I really cannot speak to that. I
Okay.
cannot be soliciting.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Thank
there.
you. But thank you for,
Yeah, I'm plugging. If I can help,
well,
we want to help.
we do have a website and we
Okay.
do accept donation, but I
Oh,
cannot
I
be
got you.
plugging.
Okay. How about this one? One more.
We do have a website.
You got to be happy with yourself. Your life has turned out real well in this regard. You came off the island, in the maroon. The people lost the land
Well,
there, and now you're fighting for some other people.
So I mean, I want to say it was maroon-like village setting, but it was not the classical maroon villages of the cockpit country. I'm not from those people, but it was a liberatory space for a lot of people because there were land ownership in that regard and subsistence farming. So I feel that I am part of the continuum of struggle to be planted on land of our ancestors and being able to keep that land and keeping our community intact, community flourishing, and providing for all of our basic needs, our liberatory spaces. That's what I am upholding. And this you can find more information to the National Black Food and Justice Alliance, Black Land and Power, and our program around creating these self-determined economies and liberatory spaces on land for African Americans. I want to put a plug that the National Black Food and Justice Alliance will be doing their annual meeting in Detroit at the end of March to the first week in February. Our on-the-ground partnership with the Detroit, the D Farm, as well as the Detroit.
Yeah, that's my guy there.
Yes, Malik.
Yeah, that's my guy.
Yakini.
Yes.
Oh yeah, he's super.
Yes.
Very steep in his Pan-Africanness and his dedication life to the agrarian struggle. So under his sponsorship, we'll be in Detroit, and it would just be a dream come true to see that cooperative.
Yeah. Now you say this has happened. What the dates? Because you said February, and then you said the end of March or something.
The end of March.
The end of March.
March 31st. So I'm sure there'll probably be some coverage in the area. It is a membership, so you have to be a member.
Yes.
But I believe that you will feel our presence in detail.
I'm if I can do something, I want to be there. That Malik is my guy.
Right.
One more question. This came about somehow for you, and you're where you need to be, so to speak. Is that how you look at it when you close your eyes and say, "Thank you for me seeing this opportunity and being here"?
Well, I think my African consciousness that has always been with me had everything to do with my landing where I am. I spent 1995 in Zimbabwe working as an informal internship with Africare, which USA, which had been the only African American NGO working through Southern Africa. That experience of going to villages and talking to cooperatives, looking at the land ownership structure in which 12,000 Europeans, really, settlers, own 98% of arable land and 96% of water rights. That did something
Oh my
to
God.
me.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
coming south and seeing the very tenuous hold that Black people were having to retain their land
Yeah.
due to economic pressures, farming itself, and heirs property. So for me, that came together.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm very, very grateful to my ancestors and God and the
I
family
love
of
it.
movement of people that I've met through this journey, and particularly to Malik Yakini for his
Yes.
leadership in this
Oh
space.
my God, that's beautiful. I got one more, and you might have alluded to it, and I might even ask this question, but in an ideal world, what would you want Black farmers and Black land to be like? How much land can we get back? How much can we save? How much is out there that we got to save? Those questions. What would be where your job would, I can't say would ever be over, because they're gonna still, racism is still gonna fight to do what they fight. But where would you say, okay, we really, really accomplished something? I guess that's it.
Well, I mean, as you know, our mission back 40 years ago was to stem Black land loss. And while I'm not a proponent of the perpetual NGO, it is the case that that still is a mission to be actualized, and that we're still working to stem Black land loss. But we now have a feel of younger generation organization who are engaging in that struggle. So it has a richer textual feeling. We have Black Farmers and Civil Rights, a book that one of Detroit's finest intellectual on this question, Dr. Monica White, has written. And so the more we get involved with telling our stories,
Yes,
I think the stronger we will be, the more engaged we are in putting legal structures in place to protect land ownership, the better off we are, because land ownership is a negotiated process, the buyer and the seller, and then state law comes into place. So we need to engage in processes that will retain the land. And also to have deep conversations in the family about heirship land, heirs property, and to put in place legal structures to protect those very fragile ownership of land. So we will stop bleeding land due to heirs property.
Okay. On a happy,
and being collective in our economics.
Yes,
and
there you go.
Developing our own ways of collectively pooling resources to buy land.
There you go. I love it.
And to really solidify a new generation of the Black land commons.
Oh, how about this one? Is there an event that your or people in that area come to that someone could come to help see Black farmers, to buy their items when we're there? Like a festival of some sort, you know what I mean, where we can meet them and say, hey, I'm a farmer, this is where they got vending space, any of that kind of thing, so that we can help support them directly.
I think the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, at their annual meetings, either in February, that's their small farms meeting. Normally that's held in Albany, Georgia, where they have a Southwest Georgia project there. And then their annual meeting, which starts in Birmingham, but then goes to Epps, Alabama. That will be a very good meeting space for vending, but it's also a space where you are in the midst of Black farmers.
I love it.
There
Okay.
is an annual meeting of Operation Spring Plant here in North Carolina where you'd meet Black farmers and you can vent. I would say, you know, at all of our events, we do make space for artisanal Black folk to come together
I
and
love it.
be able to have a display and exchange
Okay.
economics.
One more. Is there a question that I have not asked you? Something that you want people to know that maybe I didn't ask? Anything like that?
I think you've
I've done a good job.
I will
Okay.
say this in
Yeah.
the end. In the end,
Yeah, right.
I am very positive about the future of Black land ownership
There you go.
because of the ways in which the next generation is approaching land ownership in a more nuanced collective model, shifting from the majority of fee simple absolute where I own this, this is mine. So through the more nuanced collective model, we're seeing that coming together. And through the resurgency, the rebirth of expressions of Black collective economics, such as in the city of Detroit with the food co-op.
Right.
So through these collective processes, therein lies a really robust future for Black land ownership and Black collective economics that is not only important for African Americans, but will set an example for those in the Caribbean and in Africa.
I love it.
So that we can all rise together.
Oh my God. Boy, oh boy, everybody. I told you you're gonna love this. Oh my God. Straight no chasers. How we do it here at Strong Inspirations. We intoxicate, they do, your mind, not DUI, where you stagger when you finish watching us. And then we're going to put in the description all that she said as best I possibly can, you know, send the websites and so on and so forth. You an icon. You got iconish ways of some sort. You grew up and how you grew up and all this has shaped you, and now you back where you need to be doing the work that is helping, and I use this term, strangers. And joy comes from helping strangers. Some people might not even appreciate your efforts, and you do it anyway for the greater good. Has your and this is a question, has your mom, did she see all this that you've done and your family, and they know what you doing and all that?
My mother is with the ancestors.
Okay.
And so I just want to honor and respect the Black collective consciousness and expression. So I do not see myself as an icon, but as one who's deliberate in engagement of Black consciousness and collective will to self-determination. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on here.
For the invitation.
Yes.
And as I said, you remind me of back in the day when we had such fluid institutions that you offered through your virtual community of the radio.
Yes.
So I encourage you in your work, and I look forward to seeing your play in D-Town.
Yeah, because you'll be here when it happens.
Yes.
Let me say one more thing to you. In closing, everybody, hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. Don't ask no money. Hit the like button on this video. I know you like it. There's no way you couldn't. Hit the notifications bell for when the videos come up. You get notified. tell somebody, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, about strong inspiration. Let's grow together. And to you, my sister, I say this, and I mean this completely. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. Keep doing what you're doing. You are making an impact. You an icon, I'm calling it. You can't do nothing about it. With beautiful glasses on. You're a beautiful sister, a beautiful icon, doing what you're doing, using that ruckus education and all them other education that you got to help the people. With that, I'll say bye-bye, we out. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Wonderful meeting you.
Yes.